Okay, so this week I think we've had some questions in about sleep requirements, when that changes up, and also bedtime routine. So I'm going to crack on with that and cover some of that, and then if anyone jumps on, then we can answer some questions as well. So the sleep requirements that I'm going to share with you is based on the current evidence that we have. Obviously, this sort of thing's always changing. And actually, what I'd always say is look to your child, because every child's going to have slightly different sleep requirements. So you'll hear a lot of people say, well, they have to have this much, whatever, and people get very focused on it. Oh, crumbs, they haven't had that much sleep, it's going to affect their development. And no, it isn't. And there's a lot of scaremongering out there as well, that if your baby hasn't had so much sleep overnight, etc., is going to kind of affect the development. There's absolutely no evidence for that at all. The only evidence when it comes to sort of sleep deficits affecting children is once they get into kind of school age, and that's quite different. So you don't need to worry about that for a start. So in the first kind of up to the first 6 months, I would generally say kind of anything goes, and to kind of look to your babies, look to them for what they're telling you. We've gone over that quite a lot, and we talked about kind of looking for those tired cues and what have you. From kind of 0 to 3 months, it really is a case, definitely, that anything goes. Just, feed your baby when they want to be fed, let them sleep when they want to sleep, do that by any means necessary. They are, when they're very, very tiny, they're only going to go kind of up to 1 hour, 1.5 hours maximum, really, before needing another sleep. And that's quite helpful to look at, because quite often what we find is that people will come to me as a lactation consultant and say, oh gosh, everything's all gone wrong with the feeding. And actually what's become a sleep problem has become then a feeding issue, because the baby's just absolutely pooped. So they're then going to the breast to feed off to sleep, but they're not really taking a full feed because they're very sleepy. Then because they're not taking a full feed, they're tired. So then that leads into because they're not taking a full feed, they then wake sooner from that nap, so then they're tired, and you just end up into that kind of cycle. Okay, so what I would say is just kind of look for those tired cues in those early days and go with it. Once your baby gets to kind of round about kind of 4 months, we're generally seeing some kind of pattern sometimes emerges. We're looking at around about 4 naps a day. In terms of their full kind of sleep requirements, generally in sort of 24 hours, a baby between like 3 to 6 months is going to need about 13 to 15 hours of sleep overall. So it's quite helpful to kind of look at the overall picture. Normally they'd be having about 4 to 5 hours of sleep during the day as well. But if your baby's sleeping, if they want one of these magical unicorn babies that's sleeping 12 hours at night, you'll probably find they're going to need less sleep during the day. So look at that kind of overall sleep that they're having. From about 6 months, we tend to see more of a pattern emerging again, and that's it links into when they start solids and things like that. So the circadian rhythm by 6 months is normally pretty well set in. Circadian rhythm is their body clock, and up to kind of 6 months, you really want to just think about getting your baby up in the day, having naps in the light. You don't want to be worrying about putting them in the dark. I see lots of people spending an awful lot of time putting babies to sleep in the dark. It's not helpful, because we want to set the circadian rhythm body clock. And then, like I say, by 6 months, what helps with the circadian rhythm as well is you're then starting to have like meal times and things like that as well. Don't need to worry about your milk feeds in and around that. Just continue to feed them responsively. But at 6 months, you're looking generally at about 3 naps, between 6 to 9 months. And I would be looking at about 3 to 4 hours of daytime sleep over those 3 naps, about 10 to 11 hours of nighttime sleep. So an overall sleep between 6 and 9 months of 12 to 15 hours, again in 24 hours. So again, have a look at what your baby's having, and then just be really clear that 10 to 11 hours of nighttime sleep does not mean uninterrupted sleep. It just means, you might be waking for a feed throughout. That's what we would expect at that age, definitely. But they're going back off to sleep, so it is kind of a longer stretch of sleep overall. If your baby is having what we call split nights, so they're up for like an hour and a half in the middle of the night chatting to you, firstly look at what's going on. Huge developmental leaps around 6 to 9. Well, to be quite honest, the whole first 2 years, massive developmental leaps and ongoing. But have a look at what's happening. So if they're suddenly becoming really communicative, you might find that they're waking up in the night to practice that. If your baby started crawling, someone will do that really early on, sometimes they're practicing skills. So usually that would pass quite quickly, the same with teeth. But if you are long-term having a baby that's having these split nights, look at that overall sleep and what's happening. Are they getting way too much sleep in the day? Is that what's happening there? Or too early a bedtime as well? So that's your kind of 3 naps a day. Now, I would generally go with a bit of a pattern from this. I'm not one for strict routines or anything like that, but we do know that when we look at sleep pressure and the circadian rhythm and how everything kind of falls into place around that age, it can be helpful to start having a bit of a pattern of naps. So your baby knows what's coming up, and we're really optimizing what's called the sleep pressure for going to bed at night and for nap times. So I would generally suggest a short nap in the morning. So, baby up, to be honest, when you've got a little one, anything from 6 o'clock is fair game. We'd all rather it was later, but but I would say kind of 6, 7 o'clock, you're going to be up for the day. And that's really helpful, actually, because again, it's going to help set that circadian rhythm. And then within a couple of hours, have a short nap in the morning. What you don't want to do is get to a point where babies are up for like 4 hours, maybe in the morning, and they're really building up that sleep pressure and then having a really long nap. Because what happens is they knock off so much sleep pressure at that time, it's really difficult to get naps in throughout the rest of the day. And then it leads into kind of overtimes before bed, and it can just be a bit, make things a bit awkward. So I would aim for a short nap in the morning, a couple of hours after waking up, maybe for like 40 minutes to an hour maximum. And then after probably kind of an early lunch, you're going to be looking at having their kind of longest nap at that point. So ideally up to a couple of hours if you can. Some people say, well, it's never going to happen. They only ever sleep for 30 minutes. It's fine to get that nap happening by any means. I'm a big fan of, if you can, and if you have the, if it is your first child or you've got other children in school, go back to bed with them at that point and make the most of that, cuddle up with them. Also, if you do that in bed, a floor bed, for example, it's really great. When you've maybe had a bit of a nap yourself, you can roll away from them or come back in and cuddle up next to them to see them over another sleep cycle if they wake partway through. So ideally that kind of longest nap in the middle of their day. And then you want to try and get in a short sort of cat nap later on in the day, somewhere between kind of 4 and 5 usually, just for kind of half an hour, just to see them through to bedtime. Again, so the sleep pressure, which is something you build throughout the day, doesn't rise too high before going to bed. So they're kind of nice and calm, ready for bedtime. Usually, well, and again, you have to look to your child, but around about 9-ish months, we often see then babies dropping down to 2 naps. And the first one that you would drop would be that last one of the day, that cat nap. Okay, so you want to build that sleep pressure then right through to bedtime. Now, often when babies first start to drop naps, sometimes you'll need that 3rd nap and sometimes you won't. So again, look to your child. You may find that as that is changing, if they do get that 3rd nap in, that they end up with a later bedtime. But if they don't get it in, that you have to pull it earlier. So again, you need to look to them. That is really going to be the main focus of everything I say, is look to the child. Because no one size fits all sleep plan is going to be ready for your baby. And just to add a caveat in there, just be really mindful of that. There's so much out there marketed to parents. And I meet a lot of parents on the other side of it who've tried to put one of these sleep plans into place. And because they're no longer looking to their baby, and they're looking to the clock, and they're looking to this, whatever's been told to them, they've really lost their confidence with knowing themselves what their baby needs, because they're trying to follow a piece of paper from somebody who's never met their child. Now, you may find that within some of these books and some of these routines that there's bits that work for you and that are helpful, and that's absolutely fine. But just be mindful that, that you do know what's best. Use the bits that work for you and just, dump the rest, basically. So from about 16 months, we tend to see that the first nap of the day then drop. So you move to kind of one consolidated nap in the middle of the day. Those of you who are watching this who've got really tiny babies and thinking, consolidated nap, that's never going to happen. They only ever have like 20 minutes, half an hour. It's quite common to see that with tiny babies, but be reassured, it does happen. So that last nap, the first nap will be the one that you drop, the one sort of couple of hours after waking. And again, when you first do this, around 16-ish months, there's always an ish, and that'll be very dependent on your baby. For example, my babies don't walk till really, really late, literally like nearly 2 years. So they're burning off less energy and getting less tired than a child who is walking at 11 months, for example. They're going to be getting more tired. So you may find they need those 2 naps a bit longer. So when they first drop down to 1 nap, it might be, again, that you have to kind of flip between the 2, of having 2 naps and then 1. And when you do that, I would probably suggest that if you think there's no way we're going to make it to lunchtime, that you put a nap in there, but just Just make it like a little cat nap. It might be that you just get 10-20 minutes in there and you need to wake them up in order that they then get that lovely big consolidated nap in the middle of their day. Because similarly, again, if they have an hour, then they're not building up so much sleep pressure because their sleep requirements have gone down. You're then in a bit of a pickle trying to get that later nap in the day. So then at that point, kind of 16 months up to 2.5 years and beyond, some children do go beyond. I would say that if parents having a lot of difficulty sort of with a 2.5-year-old not sleeping all night, then it is time to drop that nap though. Yeah, they're going to be having kind of 2 to 3 hours of sleep in the middle of the day. Which is just amazing, isn't it? Because that doesn't seem to happen until quite a way in, until you've kind of got a toddler, and then all of a sudden you'll find yourself sitting down with a cup of tea, and it'll be lovely. So yeah, so that's just to give you some idea of what we expect to see. Again, you work with what works with your family. You might be somebody who is more than happy for your child to go to bed really late at night, and that works for them. So actually they continue to have maybe 2 naps sort of shifted further on in their day for quite a long time. Every child is different. I've had 4 children and they're all so different. One of mine would happily sit up well into the evening at like 10 months old. And then 2 of them are kind of like 7 o'clock, they're done and they're ready to go to bed. So they're all very, very different. And again, that's why it's really important for you to focus in on them. What are they telling you at that time of the day? Hopefully by now, because we did some work around looking at kind of tired signs and picking that up, that you feel a bit more confident about what your child's showing you. So I'm currently watching Robin settle River off, I'm guessing, for a nap. And what I could see is River was sort of starting to do this and nuzzling in and what have you. So Robin's kind of been like, right, okay, let's get you in the sling, get you down for a nap. I'm going to guess that's what's going on. She's on silent, but yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, that's what's happening. So again, you're just looking to your little one. So similarly, if you're kind of maybe following a bit of a pattern, but you've started, I don't know, trying to get little one down for bed at 7 o'clock, but they're really not tired, there's just kind of no point. And we're going to move on to looking at bedtime routines as well. So you are looking to your baby each time. So yes, I wanted you to just again go over kind of those general sleep requirements, but you just be mindful that's the research we've got at the moment, and also it's all so differing. This is just like the best that we've got right now. The best thing you can do though is look to your baby. So 0 to 3 months, naps all over the place, quite frankly, just go with it. Overall sleep time about 14 to 17 hours in 24 hours. And like I said, tiny babies, 30 minutes to 60 minutes max, and then kind of leading on to kind of up to about an hour and a half. Again, look to them. Yeah, so and then kind of 3 to 6 months, probably about 4 naps a day. Please don't worry too much about it. They're likely to be all over the place. 4 to 5 month old babies are a nightmare to get to nap as well. They are really pickly at that age. Everything's too interesting. It's a real great thing. That's what we expect to see. But they become very, very distractible and all of a sudden very social and what have you. And you sort of start getting this going on a lot. So it's quite normal for naps to be quite tricky at that age. But overall in 24 hours, about 13 to 15 hours of sleep. And then moving on to that 6 to 9 months, which is when we start to see, or generally expect to see, a bit more of a nap pattern start to happen. Or what I would say is if it's not happening for you, that's fine. But if you're having then difficulties with sleep, it might be helpful to start to implement that. So some people, they don't need it. Their baby just kind of works it all out themselves. But if you are having difficulties with sleep, 6 to 9 months, definitely worth trying to start implementing this kind of pattern of 3 naps a day. About 3 to 4 hours of daytime sleep over those course of 3 naps, as I've said, and then about 12 to 15 hours of sleep overall in 24 hours. That then drops down to about 11 to 14 hours of sleep between kind of 9 months up to like 2 years, really, and then it drops again. And then at which point they tend to be having all of their sleep at night. Yeah, and like I said, when they kind of drop to 2 naps a day, you're looking at about 2 to 3 hours of sleep, and then that kind of continues really when they move down to 1 nap a day. You tend to have 1 consolidated nap a day. I hope that helps. That's a bit of a kind of blah, blah, blah. You will hear lots of information about wake windows, and wake windows are okay. They can be helpful if your baby conforms to them, but they probably haven't read the book. Then one of the wake windows I hear a lot of, which will be babies once they're on to 2 naps a day, so roughly about 9 months, is the 2, 3, 4 wake windows. So I'm just going to explain that because like I said, you'll probably hear lots of this information. Don't get too hung up on wake windows. I keep saying it. I need like a little repeat sign, look to your baby. But the wake windows of 2, 3, 4 is basically 2 hours after they wake up, they would go down for their first nap. When they wake from that nap, 3 hours after that nap, they'd go down for their long nap of the day. 4 hours after they wake up from that nap, they'd then move into bedtime. So that's the 2, 3, 4. It can work quite well, but don't be like setting your clock by it, okay? It's just a kind of a bit of a guide, and it can be quite helpful. And then, yeah, we look at kind of nap gaps. It's just really to do with how long can that baby stay awake before they've kind of had it, and then moving into running off kind of adrenaline and cortisol, which isn't helpful. But you're going to be better off looking to your child's tired signs than you are wake windows. So shall I move into bedtime routine? Let's take a sip. So bedtime routine, I think really bedtime routine, you can do this from as early as you like because it can be really, really passive. You don't need to worry about it being like a really strict thing. And I would generally say bedtime routine from day dot is more about a pattern of events than it is about a time. The time will come in later. You know, don't worry, your baby's not going to be up for school the next morning or anything like that. So if bedtime routine is happening at 10 o'clock at night, not a problem. And that is definitely what I would be expecting with a very young baby. And it can really start off as simply as you go through to the bedroom where you're sleeping with your baby, just being mindful that 0 to 6 months baby should be sleeping in the same room as you. That's the safe sleep guidance. And, you know, well beyond if you want to, but definitely for a minimum of 6 months. You could move through to that room. You could have the same, this is just some examples, the same piece of music goes on. You get changed for bed, put them in, I don't know, if you're swaddling them or in a sleeping bag or using the same blanket or what have you each night, feed them off to sleep, and that's it. It can be that simple, okay? Just that you do those few steps leading into bedtime. And then as your baby gets a bit bigger, you're probably going to want to kind of build on that a little bit. So it might be that, you know, from kind of 6 months, there's a bit more of a pattern with it. You may be finding that there's a bit more of a standard time. Sorry, that's what I was trying to say, because you might have moved hopefully into, you know, kind of moving into that regular nap situation. So again, I'm going to give an example, for example, what I do with mine at the moment. She's 6 months old and we're kind of getting into a bit of a pattern of things. Is that we will very simply go through into the room. We have the same light show. So it's the tackiest light show you have ever seen. I've had it for all of mine, all 4 of them. And then when I knew I was having number 4, like 13 years later, I was like, that light show is good. I'm going to use it. Now, the reason I like something like this is it's you can move it. Okay, so if you go and stay at your friend's house when we can, or go on holiday again when we can. If you use something that you can move, it's great because you can make the bedroom environment anywhere. So something like a night show, like I said, mine is really naff. It's like a tiny Winnie the Pooh one or something, but I think it's more linked in for sleep than for me, having used it for like 13 years now. Anyway, so we'll go through to the bedroom and we'll put that on. And it twinklies away and does its little thing and get changed ready for bed. Sometimes do a little foot massage at that point, and I use a little roller ball with some scent on it. I'll talk a bit more about that later. Not forgetting we're talking about a 6-month-old baby, so this isn't very long. We don't want to draw it out too long. Do a little bit of that. Change her into her night things and put the sleeping bag on, get into bed, feed her, and then put her down. I tend to either put her down in the cot, which is still attached to the bed, or I just lay her in the bed next to me and she falls asleep there and I roll away. Yeah, so that's really, really simple. It's just 10 minutes, but it's starting to pull in a bit of a kind of pattern. Now, I do hear people who will start very young and they're starting to, you know, I've seen very, very long sleep routines at this stage. The problem with that is it just loses focus and it just stimulates a child, which is already tired because it's kind of already bedtime. So you just make that, let's say again, 3 to 4 really simple steps with a very young baby. As your child gets a bit older, so again, you know, once weaning is kind of really taken on and you've got meal times and stuff are happening regularly. So I'd probably say about 9 months plus, because it takes them a little while to really get into that. What can work really nicely is to kind of start the pattern of events, thinking kind of right back to meal times. So meal time happens and then you might want to move, again, look to your child. If your child's absolutely pooped, you're probably going to want to move quite swiftly into your bedtime routine. If not, if you've kind of managed to kind of time it okay and you've got a little bit of time to go, what can be quite nice after a meal time is a kind of silly 15 minutes where they just kind of go a bit nuts and have a bit of a playtime. Great one if you've got partners that are coming home from work at that point, because I think what can sometimes be really hard is it's like, oh, partner's coming home from work, but shh, we're trying to settle everyone to bed. And I think, well, we're missing out on a connection point there, aren't we, where you know, the parent can kind of focus in and connect with little one and have fun with them. We don't want to kind of take that away. The other thing is for you guys, sit down for like 10 minutes and let them do it, let them have it out. A great time for like roughhousing, which is basically just throwing them around. Bit of a wrestle. They love it. Really good for them. It kind of releases a bit of extra energy, gets some oxytocin going. It's great for the partner as well. Dads tend to love it. I often say get like an egg timer or something, and maybe just 10-15 minutes max of just kind of like really fun, crazy play, and get out the sillies, basically. Get any of that out. The egg timer, I think, is mostly for dad. So it doesn't keep going on. But anyway, you can be kind of like, okay, that's how long I've got left. Anyway, again, we're looking to the baby, make sure they're not too tired at this point. And then you can then from there, because you've had this fun, crazy time for you, like I said, please just take that time to sit down. You will be very tempted to then start clearing up dinner and stuff. But if you're then got the long night ahead or you're doing nighttime routine, that point is a great time to do like 10 minutes of mindfulness or whatever works for you. It might not be something that's structured, but it might be that you put a podcast in and go for a walk for 10 minutes, just something for you, just 10 minutes. Okay, you will find that makes such a difference to how you're going to focus in on the nights, just to give yourself that bit of self-care then. And then moving into kind of your bedtime routine, well, actually from there, moving into a wind down routine, just 10 minutes of changing the environment of the room. It's a great time. Make sure the screens are off at this point, because that can really affect the melatonin production, which is the hormone you need to go to sleep. If you can dim the lights, it's tricky at the moment, I know, because it's really light in the evening, so maybe even just close the curtains and stuff, just dim everything, because children get what we call dim light melatonin onset, and it starts to make them feel sleepy. It's a great time then to bring out things like your sensory, like chilled sensory toys. Don't go like nuts and bring out, you know, don't go into like messy play or anything, but things like a sensory basket, you know, where you've got like the little different, if you don't know what a sensory basket is, it's basically, I'm trying to see, mine's in the other room, sorry. It's kind of generally a basket full of rubbish. It is though, and some people go with like something that's really all natural, doesn't have to be though, and often it's just a basket full of really random stuff. So mine, for example, has got different materials in it, so lace, velvet, felt, and then it'll have something that's like made of wool. It has like a toothbrush in there, just really random objects. Some tins are great because children will like just randomly put stuff in and whatever. Anyway, it's quite a mindful, chilled activity, and little ones love it. They just kind of play and make their own little games up. A good time for jigsaws, even like building blocks, just the calm stuff, all those kind of VTech light up stuff, put all that away and just bring it down. A great time also, if you've got a box of books, to bring a box of books out and have a look at them. Now I'm making this sound really elongated. Again, only 10-15 minutes. So you've had your dinner, 10 minutes of kind of wild time, you go and have some chill time, and then 10-15 minutes of just changing the environment of the room. Now, when they talk about this wind down time, if you imagine you've just been at work, and you're really tired, but you've just been at work, maybe you've done a night shift or a late shift or whatever, anyway, you come in from work and you go straight to bed. We don't do that, do we? We would really, really struggle to do that. So similarly, taking a baby from like, I don't know, an environment where everything's kind of still going on to expecting them to fall straight to sleep in bed, they just need that time just to wind it down. If you think about maybe some of the things that you would do if you were winding down to go to bed after being at work, for example, or if you went out on a night out with friends, you would generally need at least 10 minutes just to kind of chill your beans a bit before you go to sleep. So yeah, so that's really what that is about. It is a great time to introduce something like a diffuser with some aromatherapy essential oils, in it. Now, a blend that I really like, a sleepy blend, and I'm not an aromatherapist, so do always go to someone like a like somebody just like doTERRA agent or somebody like that, or Neal's Yard, something like that, where they really know the stuff. But just to give you an example of what I like to use, it's patchouli, frankincense and clary sage. It's a really lovely mix. And you just drop them into water and have it on the diffuser. Now, if you have that start to go on, it's another sensory cue that bedtime's starting. So we've kind of calmed the room down, we've changed the lighting, great time to kind of just change the voices. So we've gone from like, crazy play to just everything's a bit more chill. Sitting together reading some books. If you've been at work as well, because not forgetting this is going to be around the sort of time that a lot of mums are going to be returning to work, This is a great time to sit and breastfeed with your little one as well. Free access to the breast, read books, do whatever, and just let them come in for cuddles, breast, whatever. Because if not, what can sometimes happen is if you stop it at that point is that they move to reverse cycling. So they want to then feed all night. So really it's a love tank time, okay, as well. So if you are returning to work, then fill up their love tank in that bit. Lots of cuddles, skin to skin, etc. Now, a lot of people then say, right, so when do we start bath time? Now, bath time is a tricky one. If everything's kind of going well and you've got heaps of time because your baby's got ages yet, you know, they had quite a late nap or whatever, then yeah, bath time might work quite nicely. For a lot of little ones, so again, we're kind of looking at 6 to 9 months up to a year kind of age, there's still, especially at the moment, there's still quite a few activities they can do. You know, if they're not sitting particularly well or whatever, bath time tends to be a really fun time. So if we've just wound our babies down and then put them in the bath, it's kind of like putting them on a fairground ride before they go to bed. And often then what we find is everything goes and it all goes hyped up again. And it's like, oh, okay. And then what happens is that can lead into more overtiredness, more stimulation, and then yeah, it just kind of exacerbates it. So often what I say actually with little babies is try and move bath time to a different time of day, or just do it quite early on in your bedtime routine. It might even be that you do it straight after dinner and have it as like a playtime and then move into your wind down time. See how you go. Again, it's important for you to do what's right for your family. And you know, this can be changed up within it. None of this is like strict set. And so I've worked with some families and it's like, but bath time is really important to us because it's when dad plays and he really enjoys it with him. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Let's just see where we can fit this in with your day that's going to work and not mess up any kind of sleep stuff. So we've gone from dinner time to kind of playtime to a wind down time. And then from here is where I would then start the bedtime routine. So if, I mean, I'm on one level here because I'm in a bungalow. So we would then from kind of our family space, then move into the bedroom and finish the bedtime routine. If you are in a house, then it might be then you go upstairs to bed. I have worked with some parents who make the wind down routine something that they always kind of like do on the landing. So maybe they'll do bath time and then move to the landing and do that. And you know, like you've got like teepees or things like that, or like a little book corner, they'll make that at that point because that's just how it works in their home. So that can be quite a nice way to do it. So again, you just kind of everybody's winding down. And then when you move into the bedtime routine, that's the time when, again, you want to move into 3 to 4 steps maximum really of kind of what we do before we go to bed. So probably things like, you know, we're getting ready for bed, changing for bed, brushing our teeth, having a feed at that point, however you're feeding your baby, milk feed. Some people like to move the milk feed earlier on in the bedtime routine if they don't want to feed off to sleep. It's very individual. If you're feeding off to sleep, it's absolutely fine as well. It's a very, very normal thing to do. And I mentioned, didn't I, about with my little one that I then put a little bit of essential oils on her feet. Well, I use the same blend, but mixed with a carrier oil on her feet as we've had in the diffuser prior to bedtime. So again, that scent then goes through the night. So when she wakes in her light sleep cycles, there's another sensory cue that we're able to kind of connect cycles with because it's just a sleepy smell. What's really nice with that as well for you guys is if you are struggling to get to sleep yourself or you're feeling anxious or anything's going around your head, is that scent, a bit like I said about the nightlight, that scent will become associated with calm and sleep time for you as well. So then if you're struggling or you need to, you know, calm down or something, then you can put some of that on as well. And that works really, really nicely. And you can also, you could bring it in for nap times or whatever if you wanted to as well. So I would always say if you're then going to do a book as part of your bedtime routine, that you do the same book. Not forgetting, sleep evolves all the time. So what, you know, at some point your child will start picking their own books and stuff, and that's fine. But we're talking about, you know, sort of little tinies at the moment. I would pick a pretty kind of, don't go crazy with a really long book. I had one parent, she said, well, I'm reading the Guess How Much I Love You book before bedtime, but we just can't get through. It's a really long book. Do you know what I mean? The Nut Brown Hair, To the Moon and Back. It's a lovely book, but it goes on for ages. You want something really quite chill, so something like 5 pages long. You know, like the That's Not My, I don't know, horse or whatever you would choose to have. Something like that's quite nice. Or even the Caterpillar book, that's quite nice. The Hungry Caterpillar, something that kind of short anyway. it becomes less about the book and it becomes more about the same pattern of words, the same pictures, the same rhythm of your voice, okay? Again, it's a movable thing. So if you then go and sleep somewhere else, you can take that one book with you and that becomes part of the bedtime routine. Now that book might change as you go, but I would say, you know, try and keep it the same one for a little while and then you might change it up. But it's not a time to start bringing in lots of different books. So let's choose 3 books, let's do whatever. Maybe as they get older, but the problem with doing it with a younger child especially, it's then like another distraction, it's another like stimulus, and it's, you know, that kind of thing. Lift the flat books, that's not great for bedtime because it's like, oh, what's happening? You want to keep it kind of quite relaxed and, like I say, keep with the same thing. So yeah, so then you would have, for example, getting ready for bed, changing into pajamas, cleaning your teeth, if they're wearing a sleeping bag, something like that. Maybe the light show if that's something you choose, or just the same music, a bit of a foot massage, for example, with the scent, the same book, feeding, and then into bed. It can be really, really simple. And what's nice with that is the actual bedtime bit is it can be quite succinct. So let's say, I mean, fingers crossed, I'm looking outside the window at the moment, it looks like October, but hopefully it'll be warm soon. Let's say you're able, soon to be able to go to a friend's for a barbecue, or I don't know, what have you. If you then come home with your baby and it's quite late, but they're still kind of up and what have you, you can move into quite a swift bedtime routine. It can just be 10 minutes max, if that, and just do those few steps leading up to bed. You don't need to then come in and be like, oh, right, now we start bath time, now we start all of that stuff, and you've come in late, don't worry about that. Just keep that succinct bit there. I hope that helps in terms of, where you can then kind of go with that. You just don't want to make it too long, really. It wants to be long enough that we know where we're going and everybody gets a chance to wind down, but you don't want it going on for so long that it just totally loses focus and no one knows what they're doing. The other thing is, in terms of bedtime routine, what works for you and your family will be different from what works for your friend. And that's fine. Do what works for you. Your bedtime itself will work for you and what's right for you and not your friends. So like I said, some babies, 7 o'clock, they're done, they're ready for bed then. If your baby isn't going to bed till 10:30, but it's working for them, and it's absolutely fine, okay? I mean, a lot of parents who get quite worried, we don't have a routine yet, or they're not in bed at bedtime. But if you lived in a different part of the world, you'd all be having siestas and probably taking your babies to bed later anyway. So it's all very, very different and works, right for your family. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else to cover in terms of bedtime routine? I talked about how to get baby off to sleep. I would say the majority of people are feeding off to sleep, and that's, again, really, really normal. Bringing in those other sleep cues, as we mentioned before, so things like if it's like a blanket or a transitional object or something, that can be really helpful, or doing some shushing at that point. If you are struggling to get your partner involved in bedtime routine because babies are just like not having it, I have met people where it's just like, oh, we just need to get them to like tolerate them being in the room, okay? It can start like that with some babies. They're really not keen on having anyone else there, but the breastfeeding parent, for example, or whoever's usually feeding them. I'm saying breastfeeding, but however you're feeding your baby. It can be as simple as really just having them in the bedroom space with you. And then you can move to things like maybe they read the book whilst you sit and cuddle and feed. And then maybe they sit with them while they read the book whilst you're there, and then they move to you to feed and then down. You can just move it on gradually like that, okay? It could be then that you maybe feed them and then they're really sleepy, you just pass them over to the other parent, who then does that final bit of settling. And then people who are having difficulties with babies who are waking very, very frequently, so I'm talking like every 40 minutes to an hour every night, obviously that isn't sustainable long term. One of the things that you can very gently move on to is actually moving that bedtime feed to earlier, like I said, in the nighttime routine. So maybe you do that last feed before you go to bed, and then you settle them to sleep, cuddling or laying with them or something like that. You don't need to do that though. It's a very difficult one to kind of get the balance, okay? This is for parents who are watching this and going, but this isn't working for me. I'm up every hour or something. Then there are things that we can gently change. But if it's working for you, there's absolutely no need to change it. There's this kind of idea, I think, that if we continue to do a certain thing, it's going to become a problem long term. Absolutely not. And if it does become a problem long term, that's the point in which you change it, not while it's working. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through bedtime routine and nap requirements. Has anyone got any questions? I know we've got a couple of people gone. I see Bex and Rebecca are here. If anyone wants to pop on. Robin, do you have any questions?
That was amazing, Sian. Thank you.
Sorry, it's a bit of a like. Blah, blah, blah.
It's so good. I'm so glad we recorded it so we can sort of go through and pay more attention to it. But yeah, no, it makes so much sense. Have I got any questions?
What do you do with River at the moment?
So that was sort of, because he's 10 months, so he's now getting into that stage where I think we need more of a routine. So we've just sort of moved our tea time to a specific time. So we have that at like 5:30. And because our problem was we were having dinner, and it was because he was just so tired. So like have dinner and he'd be too tired to then have any sort of bedtime routine. Because we have cloth nappies, so we've got to put a cloth nappy on. So it was quite a bit to put them on, and so almost too tired to do that, you know. So so that was moved. So we did the cloth nappy first, but then it meant he had his nappy on for a long time. So it was really, so basically, like I said, we just moved everything a lot earlier. And it was really lovely listening. She was like, oh yeah, we did. So we basically now have dinner. He's actually got sort of a bit of a skin issue at the moment, so we've incorporated a little bath every evening. That's been nice, but like you say, we have to do it straight after dinner, because otherwise he's just like wired. But that's really nice, and it is only like 5 or 10 minutes. And then we come into the living room, and then we very slowly get him ready. So I can put the first bit of his nappy on, and he's doing some playing and stuff. So but it was also just little things like you're saying about the books. It makes so much sense, not having be like, oh yeah, I always think reading a book is a really calming thing, but actually it's not, is it, if you get a new book every time, or if it's, so I was like, right, so that is a really good idea, just a simple thing. And one thing that last a bit, like you say, we've just started making a bit of a routine of closing the curtains. He's at that age and he loves pointing at things, so we've got some things in our window, so every evening he likes to point at it, and then he touches it. And what I try and do, and it's really nice as well, again, like you're saying, it makes a lot of sense, because if we've got lots of time and he's fine, it can, whereas if not, we can just move through it really quickly. So it's really wonderful. And I just sort of hum him. Also made me laugh what you were saying about the same thing for you, like 10 green bottles is the thing that I'm singing to him at the moment, which goes on for a lot. But yeah, so as I'm doing those things, I'm just trying to hum, and it just seems to sort of wind him down, like you say, because otherwise because we do feed to sleep, and sometimes he'll sort of feed and then he's like, and because he started crawling now as well, so before he'd lay down on the bed next to me, but now because he can move, he's like, no, I don't want to do that. So again, we've gone back to almost like I'll sit down on the bed and I'll hold him. I don't know, for some reason he's more contained and he can fall asleep then, and then I have to put him down. So it's just fascinating how much it changes, isn't it? You have to be flexible and stuff.
100%. Yeah, sleep it's not linear. It's like this. I would also say, so he's 10 months, isn't he? Yeah, so that mark, 9 months in particular, is a really tricky time for sleep. It can be really, really difficult because they're changing so much. Like you said, he's just started crawling, he's suddenly really interested in everything. So it can be a really difficult time, but that again is why it's quite a helpful time to start implementing, a little, like you've got a bit of a routine there. And that's where it's so important, it needs to be bespoke. So as Robin said, River needs to have that bath before bed, because that's important for his health, for his skin. So we need to make sure that that you work out how that works for you and your baby. So it's not about saying don't do it. It's about, like you said, where do you fit it in? Oh, well, we do it straight after then. So then we then have that chance for wind down afterwards, which is going to be much more helpful than doing wind down and then him having like a rave in the bath, So that's really great. And the other thing, you just said about closing curtains and things like that. That's a really great one, and there's again different babies, so it could be that for you that works in the wind down time. So one of the things that we've done before, I'm thinking about with my third child, Esme, I forgot we did it really. We used to think, I've got a lot of animals, like ridiculous amount of animals, and we used to go around and say goodnight to the animals. So we'd go through and say, I mean, not all of them, because we'd be here a long time. But we'd go and say goodbye to some of the dogs and the cat and things like that, and the birds and things like that, and say goodnight to them. So it could be something that simple, or it could be, we're going to shut the curtains. And the other one that Esme does, which sometimes she's 3 now, so it's a bit easier now. It can be again more flexible. It can get more flexible as they get older and their understanding gets better. But she used to like turning off the light as we went through the house. And I have to say, actually, the turning off the lights, I still do it now with my older ones. So my other children are, I'm trying to remember their ages and their names. No, I'm joking. They're 12. They're 12 and 9. Now, similarly, I don't feel like if they've sat up with us in the evening, I can be like, right, okay, bedtime, off you go, and expect them to come down. So I go through the house and I turn all the lights off and make sure it's all just, everybody starts, you know, relaxing. And I even do it for my husband. I don't even mean to, but I realise, like, he'll be sitting in the lounge chilling out, and I go in and I just dim the light. He's like, I can't see anything. What are you doing? I'm like, it's nearly your bedtime. But it just seems to make sense to me that we don't go. And that's the other thing about bath time as well. Bathrooms tend to have the brightest lights in them, don't they? Yeah. And that white light that comes from them is a real inhibitor for melatonin. So that's something to be aware of as well. If you're able to have any natural, it's tricky, isn't it? You think we want loads of fires burning, but if you're able to have some natural light or some red light, that's ideal as well into the evening. I don't really know, I've kind of undone and thought, oh, how do you do that with bath time? You could have like candles and stuff, but it's pretty dangerous, isn't it? Little people running around. But yeah, if there's something you can do where you could have a dimmer light. So I've got, oh, I should have brought it in. Can I go and grab it? Because this has been really good for me. Hang on. Hopefully I'll find it. Hang on a second.
Hi, Bex.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
I do have a bit of a question when there's a minute.
I'll just mention this and then I'll be quiet. Always got too much to say. So this little light, I don't sell these, by the way. I'm not on commission. I don't think, there you go. Can you see it? I think it's a, I don't know, Varva. I don't know, baby nightlight anyway. I don't know what the make is. I think maybe Varva. Anyway, what you do with this, you tap the top and it comes on. You're not going to be able to see it, unfortunately. And you can make it go quite kind of bluish light, or you press it again, it goes kind of more yellowy. So yes, it's not a red light, but you just hold the top, and it, I don't know if you don't think you can see on here. It's, oh yeah, you can a little bit. So you hold the top and it dims and whatever. Now that, again, it's portable, so that's ideal for, again, if you know, so you can go on holidays, etc., etc. But I think that would be useful in the bathroom as well, because it can be very dim and in the corner, and but it can be light enough you can see what you're doing, so you don't have to have all those on. And I think that's a good one to have. Great one for night feeds anyway, I personally find. But yeah, I think that could work quite well.
Do you use that for nighttime feeding? Because that was something that I found really difficult. It was in the middle of the night. It was either like light or dark, and I couldn't see anything if it was. So that's a
yeah, I really like that. So with my others, I used to use I used to just have the light show. So again, that got really associated with falling to sleep as well, because we'd have it for night feeds. But actually, I find this better. It's even less, you know, interrupted because there's no noise or anything. And like so, you just tap it, and it can go like so. It can go bright enough that it would give definitely enough light in the bathroom to bath with. But then when you turn it right down, it just gives you enough to, you know, find where your boob is.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, so Becky's here, and I think Bex as well, and they've both got questions, so I'm going to hand over.
So I'm blowing my nose.
Becky. Hey, Bex.
Hi.
Hi, Bex. Well, Becky, I don't know which one we're at. Sorry.
So Maisie is, she's 7.5 months now. She was sleeping really well for the first 6 hours of the night and then having a couple of feeds after that.
Yeah.
But she started waking up every hour after bedtime.
Okay.
Don't know what might be setting that off.
Okay. Well, so what's happening in her day at the moment? What are her days like?
So she gets up at 6:30, 7.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of play or go out shopping or whatever we've got to do first thing in the morning, usually. She has a short nap at about 9:30, and I try and get her down for a slightly longer one at lunchtime.
Okay.
It's very rarely longer than an hour though.
Okay.
So then she usually ends up having another nap at about 3:30-ish.
Right.
And then bed again by about 7:30.
And how long is that sort of 3:30 nap as well?
I try not to let it go on for longer than half hour. Sometimes she does sleep for longer though.
Okay. So she's getting, I'm just trying to work out there. So
usually about 2 hours.
Okay. So with a child her age, and again, I always look to kind of my thing of like when, you know, how much sleep they're going to want. I would be looking at 3 to 4 hours of daytime sleep. Okay. And what can happen there is if the babies are quite tired before they go to bed, as in quite overtired, that's when we tend to see more frequent wake ups as well.
Okay.
So we don't want to get obsessed with overtiredness, but I think what might help with you, Rebecca, is just to tweak the nap timings a little bit.
Yeah.
So from what you said, she's having about 3 hours before she's awake, before she's having a nap in the morning. Is that right?
Does get that long sometimes, yeah.
So I would firstly bring that forward to about 2 hours.
Okay.
That's always the easiest nap of the day to get as well. So I would look for about 2 hours, try and get her to have a nap at that point by any means, and cut it by about 40 minutes, I would say. So what you can then hopefully try and do is then get like a nice decent kind of, and get her outside if you can as well in the morning. That's really helpful. So it helps set her circadian rhythm and stuff. Do those activities after that nap, probably an early lunch, and then aim for that long lunchtime nap, maybe happening I think you might be able to get it a bit longer then, because she will have built up more sleep pressure in that time, rather than going longer for that nap and then having a longer nap. So rather than going 3 hours and then having like an hour or so, she'll go only 2 hours, only build up enough sleep pressure to have a short nap, wake her from that, so then you can get that longer one in. And then if she's having that nap at like 3:30, it sounds like she's possibly getting quite tired, so she's having to have that nap kind of 3:30ish. What's she like before she goes to bed? What kind of state is she?
She used to be quite good that, with our little bedtime routine, she'd go to sleep quite easily.
Yeah.
But recently she's like gone a bit loopy after the bedtime routine. Like she's just fallen asleep.
Yeah.
And then goes really weird.
Does she get quite hyper?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that sounds like at that point she's kind of, that's the cortisol and adrenaline. So have you ever been so tired that you can't sleep?
Yes.
And you almost get a bit fidgety, don't you? It's a bit like that with the little ones. So it sounds to me like she's not quite getting enough daytime sleep, which I think you could probably do by just adjusting your nap times very slightly. And just get those naps happening by any means necessary. Don't worry too much about how they're happening at the moment, because you can then work on that. And yeah, so she's not super tired before she goes to bed. And is she quite a happy child generally? She's quite a happy baby?
Yeah, she is.
In some ways they're the harder ones, okay, because if you've got they're all so different, they've all got such different personalities. Like my third child, she's just grumpy. She's lovely, but she's just a bit grumpy, and if she starts getting tired, it's like, yeah, nothing's going to happen until we get this sorted, because you are just no fun at all when you're tired. Whereas for a child who's got really kind of happy disposition, that sounds horrible, isn't it? You know what I mean? But that kind of way, they just tend to get more excitable and like happier, and then you just get a bit like lost. So I think sometimes they're the harder ones to spot, because they'll just keep going if given the opportunity.
She very rarely loses her stuff. So.
Okay, yeah. And that's what I mean. Whereas like Esme, my third, like if she, you've had it if she's tired, you know. But at least then you kind of you don't end up falling into kind of overtiredness really, because it's just not worth it. So I would think that's probably what's happened there a little bit. So just your nap times in that morning, try and get that one in, a couple of hours after waking up. She's watching, she's like, whatever. And then see if you can try and get that sort of chunky one in the middle of the day, and then that later one, it might even be that you need to just push that back half an hour, so it might need to be a bit closer to bedtime maybe, again, and just like half an hour at that point, just to see her through, so that by the time bedtime is happening. And what's your bedtime routine like at the moment as well? What are you doing?
We sometimes do a bath if I think she's got enough energy. Otherwise it's basically just change for bed, put the song on the speaker that she always listens to, and then feed to sleep. Yeah.
So you may find, and I can see do you go upstairs to bed? I can see the stairs behind you. So you may find starting to do a bit of that wind down before that point might be helpful. Just again, it doesn't have to go kind of crazy. Just think that kind of 10 minutes before we're going up to bed, how can I just change the environment and the atmosphere of the room that we're kind of all winding down for bed? That might help as well. And what sort of time did you say she's going to sleep?
Usually about 7:30ish.
Okay. So similarly, if this isn't improving with the change in naps as well, and that's still happening, just see if you can move your bedtime forward a little bit. So people often go the other way. They think, oh, we'll go later, but actually it then takes them forever to go off to sleep because they're just so tired. So if naps have gone a bit all over the place that day, just bring it forward, just even 15 minutes, and see what difference that makes. We see that, can really change things up.
Okay, that's great.
All right. You're doing a super job. It's so, and also she's possibly cutting teeth and starting
She is
to
actually, yeah. So I've not sort of stressed too much about it, but it would be quite nice to get those few hours at the start of the night back.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you know, if you are able to, I don't know what your situation is, but if you're able to sleep with her in the day for that long lunchtime nap, then do, especially when you're going through these periods of time. And they will feed more at night because your breast milk's actually got pain relieving qualities to it. So that's a part of why they feed. It's not, oh, they're desperately hungry. They'll do it because it actually, you know,
Make it better.
yeah, makes them feel better. So yeah, you're doing an amazing job as well to still be breastfeeding her. So yeah, make sure you get in the support around you to enable you to get that rest when you've had a rough night.
Yeah.
If only we all just lived together, then we could all just look after each other. I just
Yeah.
think about the communal living.
Wouldn't that be nice? Also, I mean, I know this is a very long shot thing, but is there any way of sort of helping her to sleep slightly later in the morning?
Yeah, so what time is she up at the moment?
Sometimes 6, half 6, which I'm not bothered about, but my husband works in a pub, so some nights he's not getting very much sleep at all.
Yeah, it is tricky because kind of 6 o'clock is, I would say, is kind of, you know, fair game for a little one, as much as we would rather it's later. But that said, when children are very tired, then we do tend to see early rising as well.
Oh, right, so it could all be...
Yeah, but what you might find you can do though, okay, is when you, and that's where it can, you know, it's a bit of a longer process, is I'm talking to you about moving bedtime forward and things like that. If you manage to kind of deal with any sleep deficit always sounds like really dramatic. She's absolutely fine, okay, don't worry about that. But in terms of she's not getting perhaps as much daytime sleep as she could, if you've managed to kind of jig that about by sorting the naps, etc., what you could then start to do is just move everything 10 minutes the other way, including bedtime, and move everything 10 minutes the other way. So then, for example, she's going to bed at 8 o'clock and then she's getting up later and then your naps and everything later. But I think what might be, you'll have to see which way you go, because what you don't want to do if she's already overtired is exacerbate that by saying, right, okay, we're going to go an 8 o'clock bedtime, and then it just gets worse and worse, and then the early rising happens. Whatever. It might be better just to sort the nap timings out, get that happening really regularly, so you kind of know a rough idea to your day when that's happening. And then, like I say, shift everything on by 10 minutes and see if you can almost kind of reset her day. So it kind of maybe instead of running from like 7:30 to 6:30, it's running from 8:30 to 7:30. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it often works to do it in little increments rather than say, right, let's go for the full hour.
Nice to know it could be possible.
Sorry?
It's just nice to know it could be possible to slightly shift their day a bit.
Yeah, definitely. But I think sort the kind of naps and stuff out first, sort that sleep pressure out so she's not too tired before she goes to bed. And then once that becomes more set in, then you can, you know, rejig it around a little bit.
Lovely. Thanks so much.
Did I don't know if Bex has got any questions. Other Bex? I don't know if you're both Bex. You're both Rebecca.
I think Beck said she did have a question, but maybe she's she on the way to the. There we go. She's there.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, I can hear you, Bex. We can't see you, but I can hear you.
Yeah, I can't really see the screen where the camera is. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, you were saying about the books.
Yeah.
We have like a little book which kind of, I don't know, has the end of the book, baby going to bed, which is quite good. But I generally finished with that. But Aniela's like 13 months now. Yeah. And we normally do like about 4 or 5 books before bed as part of her routine.
Yeah.
At what age is it appropriate to have a few more books, do you think?
Well, Bex, what I would say is if it's working for you, that's absolutely fine. And like I would, you know, if it's working for her and you're finding that she's settling to bed nicely, what can be quite tricky with that is they can, as they get older, they can start moving into, oh, just another one. That can happen a little bit. But honestly, Bex, if it's working for her and it's working for your family, then I would stick with it. If, however, you're finding that she's kind of getting a bit roused up at bedtime, then it might be worth doing the sort of few different books before you go into the room during that wind down, and then just sticking with the one before she goes to sleep.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, so there's nothing you're doing wrong there. Is the message there, really?
Yeah. Well, it's just like watch out for whether she's getting a bit overstimulated or not.
Yeah, well, again, what's she like? Does she fall asleep quite nicely? How is bedtime going?
Yeah, she goes to sleep fine when she does. I think she kind of like knows now that last book is the cue, and then she kind of starts feeding. Or sometimes we put the bunnies to bed first, and then she feeds and goes to sleep.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you've got a lovely pattern for her. So, like I said, if it's working, it's working. And you know, like you said, you finish on that same book every time. So she's certainly knowing that that's kind of the end of the books. If, like, say, if you were then finding that bedtime's getting a bit, you know, and she's struggling and she is a bit overstimulated, a bit tired, then you can always just move that around at that point. But while it's working for you, I would say go with it. Sounds like you've got a lovely pattern of what you're doing.
Cool. Thank you.
No worries.
Awesome, Sian. That is amazing. Thank you so much for all of your wisdom and knowledge.
No worries. I hope it's helpful. I hope there's some stuff for people to work with there.
Totally.
Often it's just, sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying, just because obviously we don't spend so much time with other people now, with the whole sort of pandemic, you know, it's so difficult to know what everybody's doing and what the norm is and that kind of stuff. So it's really lovely to sort of hear from you and what is, you know, from research and, you know, what works and experience as well. It means a lot. So
yeah,
thank you very much.
And it's just, you know, deciphering the rubbish actually as well. Because there's a lot of rubbish out there. I actually put a post on my social media today saying that, you know, when you make changes to sleep, sometimes it can actually be harder initially. And a lot of people, I find, a lot of families make changes because they feel like they should be, because somebody's made them think, it shouldn't really be like that. Or, for example, like Bex has just said, oh, you know, I'm doing those 5 books, should I change it up? And I said, well, no, not if it's working for you. The suggestion is to do this if you were implementing a bedtime routine. But if that's working for your baby, I mean, similarly to, I wouldn't suggest it, but, you know, if it was working really well for your baby to, I don't know, go on a trampoline 10 minutes before they went to bed, like that's fine. It is about what works for you. But if you're then finding you're having difficulties, that's when to make changes. If not, do what works for you. And I think that can be very, very hard to listen to that. I think especially first time round, there's so much questioning that goes on, isn't there? And you hear something and you think, oh crumbs, I should be doing that or whatever. And it's like, well, actually, just give yourself permission to do what works for you and your child. It's absolutely fine.
And I think, interestingly enough, sometimes the first time round, when things are really easy, or it's almost like, well, that's too easy. It can't be that easy. I must be doing something wrong. And it's like you say, actually, no, it is. So go with it. So.
Yeah, definitely. Just go with it. It needs to be like, it needs to be in the bounty pack.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, lovely. And thanks, Becky and Bex, for coming along. And
yeah, nice to speak to you
in a while.
Yeah, super.
Cool. I'm gonna end now and leave.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks ever so much. Bye. It's going to take me forever to actually manage it, isn't it? There we go. Ding, ding, ding.